entered into the discussions with the XFL a few months ago that ultimately didn't amount to anything. There was a lot of speculation amongst colleagues that there was discussions like fundamental changes were on the table, whether it was 4 downs, whether it was changing the CFL calendar to become more of a spring league, whether it was a merger. And so I'm wondering, was there interest within some of the governors to have major structural changes to the CFL? And if not, why ultimately was the decision made to keep the CFL pretty much, the same fundamental league?
Well, I'd start by saying that I think the conversations we had with the XFL group were very positive. They're a very nice group of people, and there was a real thoughtfulness to the way they approached our discussion with them. And I'd like to say and think that we did the same on our side. And we talked about everything. We talked about what it might look like if we were to come together and all of those things. I'll go back to answer the question more specifically about what is or was or wasn't on the table and what is or isn't on the table is a group of governors today that want to grow this league, that have now, I think we've really popped the cork on an opportunity to think differently than perhaps we have in the past, to look at all issues, but not through the lens of solutions first, but through the lens of principles first. What is it that we want to accomplish? What do we want our game to look like? How do we make our game safer for our players? What kind of changes what type of change? So once you answer the principled questions first, you get an opportunity to think about the solutions that might follow. And I'm really happy to say that we've got a group of governors that I think, frankly, are supported by the fans that want to see us do everything we can to help this game to reach its full potential. So that, in part, speaks to the quality of the conversation that we had with the XFL. It was about how do we do this? What might we do? What would it look like if we did this? What are all the things that we might do together? And it's all the things you raised and a whole bunch more. In the end, we agreed it just didn't feel like the right time in that moment. They wanted to get on with the business of thinking about starting their season in 23. We have a league that's had a long and storied history and a great future in front of us, and we decided to part company as friends. And I think that's how it unfolded.
Randy used the expression, change the things we have to change. Can you identify some of the things that you have circled in that manner? And is Genius putting any money into this operation, and does Genius have a relationship in any way with the XFL?
Terry, we are not, by a decision we made jointly with our friends. We're not going to talk about the terms of the deal. What I can tell you is the majority of the investment they're making in our league is technology. Technology and service is the biggest contribution to this new partnership, which is one of the reasons why we're so very excited. Are they doing business with the XFL? I don't know, to be honest with you. We haven't asked them that question. We know they have a relationship with the NFL, 400 sports leagues around the world. As I said, I think the long list includes the Premier League in the UK. It includes the PGA, and the list goes on and on and on. But Terry, I honestly don't know if it includes the XFL.
All right, so there you heard Randy Ambrosie talking about the relationship with the XFL and CFL, kind of things that this isn't new to any of us, but they parted as friends, essentially learning from each other. So as much as media types believe that the CFL talks and XFL talks were a waste of time for both leagues, clearly it was not at all. The CFL announced a major partnership this past week with Genius Sports that will, quote, accelerate growth and broaden reach of the CFL in existing and new markets. Just to note, during his time with the NFL, Redbird Capital's Kevin LaForce was behind the NFL's Genius Sports data deal. So no doubt Redbird Capital had some influence on this deal with their talks. And a lot of what you heard Randy Ambrosie talk about when it comes to the chatter with the XFL in his press conference this past week was a lot of, they've changed their business model. Supposedly the CFL will now have revenue sharing. You have Genius Sports come in, helping them market and, doing their technology for their company. They really made a lot of changes based on their conversations with the XFL. So I think the CFL learned a lot. Hopefully the XFL learned a lot, and they learned from each other, having these conversations, and change is coming to the CFL. Now, it was interesting listening to and watching the press conference. Yeah, man, I wish I was there. But I wish a lot of people were just like, how can you make the league better? How can you make the league better? And he kept going back to this partnership with Genius Sports. One of the things you need to realize too, and it was interesting this past week, is that the knock on the CFL is that their audience is a lot older. And that is no doubt. I mean, we've seen it in our data that it's older. But getting that Gen Zer part of the viewing audience, no one's getting, because they don't care about sports particularly. It's worse in the CFL than it is maybe in the NFL, but the NFL is worried about that too. And I would note, I was watching the pregame on CBS. CBS owns Nickelodeon, and they were pumping some kind of like Nickelodeon Slime Time show geared towards kids that is a highlight show, an NFL highlight show on Nickelodeon. So that kind of tells you right there. So Nickelodeon is having some kind of type of, I didn't know what it, I was like, what? But you could see everybody's trying to go after that younger demographic, because right now they're not involved in any of these sports. And this is what makes The Rock so powerful. All my kids who are high school age and younger all follow The Rock on Instagram. They're all fans of his. He has that connection, so that's a huge thing that The Rock can bring to the XFL, is bringing that young audience. I've talked about it before, why maybe the USFL, or why there could be something with the NFL and XFL in the future because of that connection that he has. And influencers are huge right now. They make a lot of money, and they move merch, and they reach out to audiences. So, but all in all, I was really happy to hear about Randy Ambrosie's change and the things that they're coming with the CFL. Hopefully it's just not talk, that it's action and actionable. The Grey Cup was a lot of fun, and covering the league was a lot of fun. I watched more games in my lifetime of the CFL this past year than I ever did in the history of anything, because I never even bothered to look at it. And it was fun. And I love spring football. I love the leagues, that aren't the NFL. Probably more so than I like the NFL. I like watching the NFL too, but I'm more interested in these other leagues, clearly. But that was Randy Ambrosie saying that the XFL has parted company as friends with the XFL. Does this leave anything open in the future? I don't think so. I think that game between the XFL and CFL has been put to rest. He's said that multiple times. 5 years down the road, maybe they talk again. Who knows? There was chatter about, there's always the Toronto Argonauts rumor, and then there's always the rumor of 4 downs versus 3 downs. That's to be debated amongst them over the offseason. I doubt they make any changes. But we'll have to find out what kind of influence Genius Sports has, and their influence the XFL had in talking with the CFL this past season.